So welcome for another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show. It is a pleasure to be here today. And today we are going to really, enjoy this conversation. I'm having, I was actually writing that we're going to Antarctica, and I think we will be going to Antarctica virtually. My guest today, he has been to Antarctica, and we're really gonna know everything, about what she's learned there and what Antarctica looks like and what are the key challenges. And just to give you a bit of introduction, so today I'm having Madina Mothupi. She's based in South Africa in Cape Town, and her mom was on the show last year, if you remember. We talked about entrepreneurship with Amina, a mom. And Dina is a fourth-year undergraduate student at the University of Cape Town, and she's majoring in psychology and French language. So you know that my first language is French, and literature as well. And she has an affinity for, animal health and welfare, and obviously the environment. And that's the reason I think she made this expedition to Antarctica. And some of her hobbies is, riding horses and even tennis, when she has the opportunity to do it. But I'm not going to say much because I really want her to get to tell you her own story. And just to remind you, today the topic is going to be about expedition, and the expedition was called 2041 Foundation, from the 2041 Foundation, ClimateForce. And it was in March, and it happened in Antarctica. So if you've never heard about Antarctica, please, tune in, come in, let us know where you're watching from, and please, be part of the conversation, because this show is here for you. And we make sure we bring you, the best. We bring you people who can actually inspire you, people who can actually, give you an information that is really important. And in that case, Dina is a climate change activist, and she will, tell us all about it. But before, all the excitement, let's prepare yourself, have a pen and paper, if you want to note whatever Dina is going to share with us. But the most important thing, please, be part of the conversation so that you can, know a little bit more about Antarctica, but more about, Dina cause. So stay tuned. I'm bringing Dina now. Another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show, the show that is brought to you by the Telekima Global Leadership Organization.
Real is important is if you just look at the word compassion, when it's behavior, it's something that can be learned, and it is something that we can embody through habits and through our daily actions.
To get this idea that if we interject this wisdom intentionally, I call them needle movers. It's the needle mover that's missing.
Don't deprive the world of your greatness. Please. Don't do that anymore. Dare to excel, dare to be sexy, dare to be you, dare to be the best version of yourself. Impact yourself positively, and from there impact others. And you are not alone.
So welcome, Dina, to the Greatness Engineering Hour show. It is such a pleasure to have you. I'm excited because I know that I've heard about this expedition, and I really want to know more about it and how it went, and also hear about, the cause and all the activism that you do, around climate change. But before we get to this point, I just want you to reintroduce yourself in a way, because I gave, a very short introduction, but I really want you to introduce yourself to the audience and let us know who you are and what is really important for us to know about you.
Thank you, Ms. Chulikima, for giving me this opportunity. It is such a pleasure to be here and to be interviewed. To the audience, so my name is Madina Mothupi, as has been stated. I am a fourth-year undergraduate student at the University of Cape Town. And how I became interested in this expedition was that I applied to be here through a program as a part of one of my university's student clubs, specifically the We Are Animals Club, which is a society based around animal health and welfare. And that's how I was able to get the opportunity to be a part of this expedition.
Fantastic. And, I read that you are all about, the environment. You do a lot of activism about the environment, animal welfare, obviously. And you've been to Antarctica and in March. And one thing that I really want to know is, what was the reason to go to Antarctica first? And how is Antarctica? Because that's the question that we're asking ourselves. We see Antarctica just as ice, and that's it. But tell us, your own experience of your Antarctica.
So why I decided to sign up for the expedition when it was presented at my university student club was because I wanted to see for myself the impact of climate change. Plus, I also wanted to observe the penguins there and any sort of other wild animals and flora and fauna there in their natural environment. And I must certainly say that it certainly did not was such an amazing experience, in the sense that being in Antarctica, how I would describe it is that you'll definitely see the lack of human impact there, and that it's quite a relatively peaceful place. Obviously, it's cold, although unfortunately you do start to see signs of climate change in terms of a bit of ice floor, the thawing out, and algae growing there. But it really is such a pristine environment, and that you get to see. It's a place where you can be at peace with yourself, and that you don't see any sort of littering, you don't see any signs of human destruction. You get to observe the animals interacting with each other in their natural environment. It's purely one of the most amazing experiences to have.
Fantastic. So we're going to say hello to the people that we have here. So we have Metab. Hey, Metab, greeting
Hi.
from Iran. And we have Patrick. Okay, welcome. Good morning. He is in Canada. And we have Mom here. She's one of my, she's always in the audience when I have a show. So welcome, Amina. And I hope you will enjoy the show just as usual. And, you mentioned that climate change is one of the greatest, challenge right now, and in Antarctica, obviously. So what are the key things that this expedition that you've done is actually going to address, to make sure that, climate change is taken care of?
So the key point of this expedition was to get a diverse group of people from all around the world with various strengths, so that we can come back to our own countries and push for climate change implementation regimes in our own country, so that we can fully address this issue. So one of the key things definitely was about we had to learn exactly what climate change was, what exactly constitutes climate change. And we had a series of workshops around what climate change is. And then we also had leadership workshops as well, in terms of how it is you can convince people that climate change is a serious threat to everyone and how it's going to affect all sectors of society, all sectors of the economy. And also we did a little bit of background into Sir Robert Swan, the person who was hosting this expedition, who himself is a well-renowned polar explorer. And we heard his background for why he wanted to protect Antarctica and how he became involved in environmental issues as well. So it was quite a lot of interaction with people from different backgrounds, but also quite a diverse range of topics that were covered in this expedition.
Fantastic. So we're going to have a video where, just to give, the audience a feel of what it is to be in Antarctica, and we will be back to continue this conversation. So don't go anywhere. Let's go to Antarctica.
What this expedition is all about is giving young people, all of us, the chance to talk about action, to talk about solutions, and actually go back home and make the change.
So back home it's quite warm, populated. You have noises from the cars, noises from the people. Here it's predominantly peaceful and quiet. The only noise is for the animals. It's just so pristine, and it's such an outer-worldly spiritual experience that really connects you to what it means to be a human being, to what it means to be living on Earth.
We are here at Deception Island. I think it's important that we realise what we're capable of doing. Way back in the 1850s through to the 1930s, we were down here slaughtering whales, seals, and here is an example of what could happen in the future.
Antarctica means for me international cooperation, and that's what we need today in order to cope with climate change. So it's hope. Antarctica means hope.
Climate change is not something that is going to happen in the distant future. It is already happening now. And that's why our actions matter, what we consume matter, our lifestyles matter.
We've come to Antarctica. We've taken so much in inspiration from the continent, inspiration from each other, and this is not the end of the expedition. This is the beginning of the expedition. Go home and become champions and ambassadors to show future generations that we actually care.
So we are back. We are back with Dina. This is really amazing. It looks so, peaceful. And just wanted to ask you, I mean, you've been there what, a week or something, or 2 weeks. So what, when you came back to, home to South Africa, how did you feel? What was, your impression, coming from, a very, quiet place, and where the nature is really, expressing itself, to, the big cities, in South Africa. So how, how was the transition back?
The transition was quite challenging because I had to get used to being on land for quite a while. But it was also, I definitely came back with feelings of inspiration in the sense that, and the sense of urgency that we have to protect our natural spaces, and that we definitely have to transition to a more ecologically sustainable lifestyle, that way that we can balance our needs to protect the natural spaces, to protect animals, especially the wild animals, but also integrate it with our urban and modern lifestyle. So I came back very inspired, especially by my fellow teammates.
And I heard in the video that the gentleman that was speaking was actually, sending you to the world, and start, taking action. So what are the key action that you're going to implement, now that, you've lived, this experience, and the extent of, what the result that climate change can have. So what are the key things that you're going to implement in, in your environment there in South Africa?
So one of the key things I would definitely think about in terms of implementation is talking to businesses, because businesses play a huge role in terms of the economy, especially private sector. And I'd like to talk to them about ways in which they can implement carbon removal systems as a temporary method, while we're implementing more long-term solutions in terms of the energy crisis, but also in terms of finding ways to make make corporates more ecologically sustainable. So that would be the first step that I'm thinking of doing. But also another method I'll definitely be doing is talking to people, especially in terms of talking to my fellow university students, high school students at schools, to educate them more about what climate change is and what are the solutions that we as everyday people can do. Even though, yes, most of the work would be more on the corporate sector and at governmental level, there's still things that we as ordinary people can do.
And I fully agree with that, because sometimes we think that the pollution or the gas emission is just coming from the corporation, especially the companies in the energy sector. But everything we use actually is actually a threat for climate change. This is now the time of Christmas, and sometimes people don't realize the lights that they're using on their Christmas tree, the artificial Christmas tree that they're using, and all kind of things that they use. It's actually, it's actually creating, it's actually amplifying the problem of climate change. So they have to be aware of all of this. Obviously everybody's aware of, oil, gas, polluting, but it starts at home, and I think you're right. The awareness has to be, the people have to be aware and conscious of whatever they're using, they're actually impacting, and they have a responsibility. It's not just the corporate; they also themselves have a responsibility. They use phones, and to get the batteries in the phone, we have to mine, and yet we screaming that the mining companies are. So everybody has a responsibility, and I think it's a very important step that you talking not only first to your colleagues at university, but also engaging with communities and also especially the business community. So thank you for that. But one thing that I really want to know is, has you take this step, obviously you can't do it on your own. So is there, a platform or a group of people or an organization that you work with, or different organization that you work with to amplify this this action that you took?
I'm currently a member of my university's Green Campus Initiative, which is a environmental society that is dedicated to making our university more ecologically sustainable. So I definitely will use that channel. And I know that the board at my university, there's a dedicated sustainability related board. So we'll definitely be in touch regarding those matters. But I'll also be reaching out to my networks at my former high schools and just any other high schools that would that I can be available to speak at, and also with my with my peers who were also in the 2041 expedition this year that are South African. We are definitely planning initiatives together, and we're definitely collaborating on what we as a team can do here in South Africa.
Mm-hmm. And following this expedition, are there any tools or processes that you've been communicate that they communicate to you, that you can actually have and widely spread among your obviously your peers, but also the community? Because I know I mean, I've lived in South Africa. It can be difficult to change culture. It can be difficult to change people. They have a certain way of thinking, a certain way of doing things. So any strategy that you've actually picked up while participating to, or any tools that you think should be shared or even communicated to us today?
I think one tool that is certainly important is to relate this issue to people's personal lives, because especially, and which is relatively easy to do when it comes to climate change. People wouldn't necessarily be caring about such an issue unless they know how it is going to affect them. And you also have to find a way to have a discussion and obviously bring the facts at hand, saying, look, this is what's happening, we have the evidence. But also you have to get personal and say, look, this is how it's going to affect you in this and this, in X, Y, Z, and here's how we collectively as a people should address this, instead of unnecessarily pointing fingers, because that is where people are going to get at the defense and they're not going to listen to you. And that, I think, has been an issue in terms of climate awareness, where unnecessarily people have been pointing fingers, have been going about it in an unnecessarily accusatory tone, which is going to shut people off. Unless you somehow come at it with a collectivistic mindset and say, this is how we all can contribute to solving this problem. Here's how it's going to affect you, because you, let's say as a parent, you have a child and you want this, you want to preserve the planet so that your child can have a future. You don't want to deal with issues such as climate refugees, or especially if you're in an island country where you're going to have to flee your own country because of climate change, where unpredictable weather patterns means you don't know where the next meal is going to come from, and all those types of challenges. You have to really relate it to the everyday person's life, but also make it easier to do so and make it accessible, because some of the methods in terms of eradicating climate change have been relatively more in terms of for people who've been on the more wealthier ends of the scale, rather than how an everyday person can do it.
And that's that's going to be my next question, because it costs a lot. Climate change, implementing, changing things to get clean energy and to do things right. It is it's actually capital intensive, and for countries, developing countries. So I don't know how we go around it, and I really want to have your view on that. Do you think, because obviously, the developed countries can actually afford, this transition and do it in a very, a quick way. But for developing countries who are actually, suffering more because they actually didn't participate really into all this process, it can be very difficult to, even when you create the awareness in the community, they might tell you we can't afford actually to, to live that way and not to use different things. So how do you think it can, this gap can be closed? Any
I
idea?
think that I think this gap can definitely be mitigated through the corporate sector, because corporate sector is the backbone of practically any country's economies. Although one way to get them in terms of to participate in terms of telling them that, look, climate change is going to affect your revenue, it's going to affect the future of your business, is certainly through tax incentives, because then they'll be more likely to invest in ecologically sustainable solutions for their business, but perhaps also contribute to the development of communities in terms of ecologically making them more environmentally sustainable. Then also, I'm quite aware that as of the latest COP27 meeting, there were the developing countries have pledged a fund for developing countries. So that is also going to be quite useful in terms of assisting the energy transition, which would mean that one solution that you can definitely use is carbon removal, even though it might be a short-term solution, while you're implementing long-term environmental and energy sustainable solutions that are appropriate to your country. For example, if you're a country like South Africa, where in certain areas you would get a lot of sunlight, then you would definitely be more looking forward towards harnessing solar energy as opposed to wind energy in certain parts of the country. So I definitely think getting corporates on board, in addition to effectively utilizing the funds from developed countries that they've allocated towards developing countries, and also strategic government intervention as well, would definitely would mitigate the majority of this issue. And then the last step would definitely be education and awareness campaigns, so that you can inform the majority of the population, and that way we can do our parts to mitigate this issue.
Yeah, and I think it's, it has to be an integrated effort. And I know that, carbon, CO2 has had, a bad name, but I still remember from my time doing physics, CO2 is actually good for plants, because that's what they take, and that's the photosynthesis. And then, the plants actually release, oxygen. So it is also, it's not only the removal, not just looking at the removal, but it's also looking at, alternative, method, like planting trees and have, more green things happening, so that the plants can actually absorb what is, emitted, and then, give us more oxygen. So I think sometime, and I think you mentioned it before, is that, the fingerprinting and really not looking at things from an integrated point of view can actually be negative and push people to actually not follow. I think that there's a way to communicate. The awareness is good, but also looking at different alternatives, and not just pointing at one industry, or and leaving the other industry apart. So we're gonna have a break, and just gonna put here your mom comment. Well said, Madina. Information is power. Definitely, awareness, information, and really collaborating and working together, because I think that's the stage that is still missing in all of the debate and all of what's happening right now. So don't go anywhere. We're going to have a break, and we will be back with, Dina on this very, very, insightful conversation. So don't go anywhere. If you are with us, if you have a question for Dina, don't hesitate. But let's have a short break, and we will be back.
We want to recognize again Janelle Harris. I'm part of the She Exists platform, and that's designed really to elevate women in the communities and highlight them that have done some phenomenal things. And maybe they have, had a dip, had to overcome some things, and Janelle is here to raise you up. She's a phenomenal woman. She gives it from her heart. So she started this She Exists platform to show that, women have voices. And that just went so well that she decided to come up with a magazine. This is her first magazine. She's very excited. I'm honored to grace the cover of one of the magazines, and Growing Ageless. And we've put a lot of work into this. There are going to be several, I think 5 or 6 other covers there. And we're going to do an
So we are back. It was, a commercial about She Exists. She Exists magazine. Janelle Harris is the CEO of She Exists, and She Exists support this show. And there is, a new edition coming in, a flip shop edition. And She Exists is moving, is going places, going global, and going to Hollywood now. This is the next edition going to Hollywood. But today we're talking with Dina. Dina is based in South Africa, and she has been in Antarctica, and she is, an activist, a climate activist. And if you're joining us, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, what she's learned, at this expedition in March in Antarctica, and how, she's using what she's learned, she learned there to actually, implement things instead of just, telling people what to do. So, Dina, as we talk about, the climate change and also your expedition, what I really want to understand, because you went to Antarctica. Are there people there? Because are people living in Antarctica? And what is the style, there? Because I'm still, trying to figure out how people can live there, and what are the challenge that they have to face.
It's a very good question. Thank you for asking. They definitely are, in terms of the scientific teams that are based there doing their climate research and any other Antarctica-related research. But we didn't go there because, it would interfere with their research. So we went to visit the abandoned Antarctic base of Argentina. So we were not near those bases, but they do exist, and there are quite a few for different countries. I know South Africa has a base, one of the only African countries to be involved in Antarctic research. I know also I think China has a base, UK, Australia, quite a few Western countries do have a base there. So, but yes, it is very challenging. And if you look at the history of Antarctica, it is very easy to die there if you aren't prepared and you aren't aware of how cold it can be and how practically dangerous the terrain can be. So the explorers of the past, how they were able to survive it is, if you look into the history, that is quite amazing. That's why you would have to train immensely if you were going to practically cross certain areas of the Antarctic. And also definitely, you definitely have to trained and to go there.
So did you have a particular training before going there? And if yes, how long, what did you do to train to be ready to go there?
So what we had to do is that we were instructed to practically have the same type of training in terms of the hike, because we weren't going deep into the areas of Antarctica where there would be crevasses, which would mean that it would be easy to fall and die. So I think we were practically around the edges and Deception Island. So it was relatively light training. But even then, I don't think as a person who's never been there, you could adequately prepare yourself for what is there, because it is quite unexpected and it is quite intensive.
And that's and I mean you're young, so that's not a problem, but it can be intimidating, I think, and also wanted to know exactly, what did you eat there? Is there, do you cook or do you eat raw food, or what is, what is the diet there?
So for us, we were on a cruise. Well, it's somewhat similar to a cruise ship. So we did eat normal food.
Okay.
We didn't get to have the explorer treatment where you would have specialized type of food, but unfortunately, we did get to have a normal food because we didn't sleep on the Antarctic. Antarctic as a landmass. We would have excursions in the day and in the afternoon, and then we'd return back to the ship.
Okay. So you didn't have to stay outside and in the cold, which is
Not yet.
not yet. So are you because after this experience, are you ready to go back there, or to live there for a few months, or even few years? Is it a place that you would be comfortable to live there?
I'm up for the challenge if the opportunity presents itself.
Okay, all right. So that's quite courageous. And what, one thing that I really wanted to know is, I don't know the culture there, but do they have schools? Do they have children going to school? How is it? What is the how does it work in a way?
Well, how it works is that Antarctica, a landmass, is supposed to be preserved as a place for peace and scientific research. So I know there's an organization, an Antarctic organization, that does regulate any sort of tours going there that aren't related to scientific research. So you have very strict regulations in terms of what tour operators can and cannot do. For example, if you're going to enter a walk on the landmass, you have to understand the rules in terms of interacting with the wildlife, that you'd have to be at least 5 meters away from the penguins so that you don't interrupt their or any other wild life, so that you don't interrupt their behavior. You have to have sterilized boots to go there so that you don't bring any sort of microorganisms that would not naturally grow there. So it's quite strict regulations. And I think that because you would be taking, because we went off from Ushuaia, which is the southernmost point of the world, and it's in Argentina. I do believe that Argentina has quite integrated and quite rich programs around Antarctica that would educate the youth. So yes.
Because what's funny, I mean, when I listen to you, is the type of environment that Antarctica is, and yet mining is happening there. There's mining happening there. So how do we reconcile all of this? I don't know if you had the opportunity to see and by seeing that and analyze and doing your own analysis, what do you think? Because we're talking, in one hand we're talking about climate change, and then yet there's mining happening. So how all of this is structured?
How I think we would reconcile this is to remember exactly what is the purpose of, keeping Antarctica relatively untouched, and what are the benefits of this? Because the reason for this is that it's a place for peace and scientific research. It's a place that all countries, regardless regardless of their origin, regardless of their agendas in terms of geopolitical agendas, should come together to say, look, let's leave this place untouched. And I believe that if you do sit down with these organizations and say how that this is that this place should be left alone, and that we can find some sort of a compromise between this, or somehow compensate this industry, but to discuss this as an option, I do believe that it is possible to reconcile, given the fact that that area alone, there's already been a lot of historical damage done, given that 99% of the whale population has been decimated with the trade of whaling for oils. And so I do believe that it is necessary to keep it untouched, but to sit down and discuss the ways in which you can that people can somewhat use it for scientific research, use it for peace and for educational purposes. But an intense and thorough discussion on this matter with all the relevant stakeholders is necessary. But I also believe that in order for that to happen, you would not need to politicize the issue. And I think that's where the problems around preserving Antarctica, preserving environment, originate from, is that people politicize it into left-wing, right-wing ideologies instead of looking at the facts. We need to be more driven around the facts around Antarctica, the facts around climate change, in order to make sensible decisions.
And I'm happy you're talking about it, because sometimes there's some people don't have facts, and most of the political but they use the platform for other gains, and that's not what is intended to. And it is important to make the distinction about the political agenda and what are the real facts, so that people understand that there's something happening, and we have the power to do something now before it's late. But because of some of the political agenda who actually kind of get themselves injected, the politicians get themselves injected into it. People are just, taking a back seat, and some of them just don't want to do anything because they think that it's just politics. And it is important that this message, get really clear that we have to stick to facts and not just listen to people or politicians. So so you wanted to add something?
Oh, so sorry. I also wanted to add on to what you were saying in terms of the facts, is that we also need to remind people about the common goals, especially regarding such discussions, because everyone wants a safe environment. Everyone wants, a place with clean air. Everyone wants, an environment where you still have some sort of access to technology, modernization, but balancing it with preserving the natural environment, which definitely scientific studies have shown has an effect on your mental health. People don't want to be in an environment that is, polluted, that is hazardous for you to live in. And I think if we remind people that, this is what we're doing to achieve this end result, then I think it's certainly more likely to get people on board and to work with each other to achieve this goal. No one wants to live in an unsafe world, quite frankly. Yeah.
Fantastic. And yes, we all want to be safe and healthy, because that's the most important thing. So we're gonna have a break. I see that we have okay, Mr. Dr. Joubert, Mr. Remarkable is joining us from Cameroon. Thank you to be here. And Mom is still around, obviously. And we're going to have a break, and then we're going to finish, on a high note with this conversation. It has been very insightful, and I hope that you're enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really, inspired by by Dina and by energy and the knowledge in this subject. So don't go anywhere. We will be back in few minutes.
Tous les souhaits. Qui c'est madame en talent, même si vous savez ça, ça fait la peine. Elle est souffert, moi elle a souffert, porté.
So we are back. We are back with Dina, and we are actually concluding this show. I'm already getting sad because I really enjoyed this conversation and wanted to know a little bit more, but that's not the problem. I think for all of us, whoever wants to know more, you will have the opportunity to connect with Dina if you want. But before we get to this stage, just wanted to ask you, Dina, I mean, you've been to Antarctica, you experienced, Antarctica, and, have an idea of how climate change is impacting Antarctica. And now you're back home, you also see how things are done. And one thing that I wanted to ask you, what is the key message, that you want us to know, based on those, based on this experience that you had in Antarctica and your knowledge and your involvement in the climate change?
I would say certainly that the key message is that we all definitely need to act now, because we shouldn't wait for any delay in terms of acting to mitigate the climate, to mitigate the effects of climate change that are already impacting us now. Otherwise, it's going to have a more disastrous effect, and that we definitely need to work together and do our part so that we can have a future and the survival of our species.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we need to act now, as you heard from Dina. Don't wait. And I think one of her motto is from Desmond to do your little bit of good where you are. So wherever you are, you have a responsibility in all of this. Don't sit down and think that it's just a responsibility of corporates. You have a role to play. Every day you are making an impact on climate change, either on the positive side or the negative side. Everything you touch can actually have an impact. So it's those little bits of good put together that's overwhelm the world. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's the message that Dina brought to us today. And I really want to thank you, Dina, for such maturity into such a difficult subject, and really putting your point of view here and educating us in a way, and bringing this message of urgency to the audience. But before we leave, how do people can connect with you to get to know the work, get to be familiar with the work that you're doing, and also continue this conversation if necessary?
I would like to say thank you to you, Ms. Chulekima, for allowing me to be here and to speak on your platform. It is honestly such a prestige to be here. I'd also like to say thank you to the audience for taking the time to listen to me. I'd also like to say thank you to the sponsors that enabled me to go on this expedition. In particular, Lejara Global Solutions and Systemic Logic for their commitment to corporate reformation in terms of environmental sustainability. As in terms of my platform, as of now, I'm only on Instagram, which is Madina Mothupi. I am currently So that is my Instagram handle as seen on the video. I'll be working on other platforms, and I will let you know as soon as they are working and ready. But thank you so much to.
Fantastic, and this is a proud mom. I'm super proud, Madina. Well done. She is amazing. I can, confirm it has been a real hour, of greatness, and that's what this show is all about. We bring you those who have, done something that is exceptional, those who come to inspire you, and those who need you to support their work as well, because obviously Dina cannot do it, on her own. So you have the responsibility as well to support this cause, which is a global cause, and help, us, help humanity to go forward. Don't think that it's, someone else's problem. It is all our problem. Global, the climate change is all our problem. And as I was mentioning before, we have to do it. You have to address it as a team and it's a collaborative effort. That's the only way we're going to be able to do that. So any, last message that you want to leave the audience with, anything that, of particular importance that you feel you've missed before we close out on the show?
Yes, I would like to add there's another sponsor that did also enable me to be able to go to the Antarctica, which is Brainstorm Solutions. I'd also like to thank them for also demonstrating their commitment to environmental sustainability. And in terms of a message for anyone that's out here watching, like I said, act now, do whatever it is that you can to mitigate the situation. Don't do things that that you aren't able to do, but definitely it's action and collaboration.
Fantastic. It has been, again, I'm saying it again, an amazing, conversation, amazing interview with Dina. Make sure you support the work that she's doing. It is an amazing work. And you know her handle, you can, check what she's doing and obviously DM her if necessary. And I really want to thank you for your time and for your insight today and for your inspiration, because it's really inspiring, to see such a young, a young woman to really, be so dedicated and so, passionate about, this cause. And I want to thank the audience. I want to thank everybody who've been able to watch this show, but also, thanking already the one that are going to, to watch the replay later on. And please, let us know what you think of the show, and let us know if you have any more questions for Dina. And I will share the question with her. So reach out directly to me. So that's all for today. It has been amazing. I'm going to say bye-bye to you, Dina, and thanks again for being with us and for inspiring us. And thanks to the audience. So take care and see you for another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour show on Friday. On Friday, I'm going to have two amazing ladies. We're going to talk about the girl child, and the two ladies are going to be in different countries, one in Kenya and one in Florida. So I think it's going to be a great conversation, especially as we, advocate, as we, starting the global campaign against gender, gender inequality and gender violence. So thank you and see you on Friday.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chulekima.